which he was sworn to uphold?
Now, I will not have you libel Abraham Lincoln.
I don't understand the problem with registering guns. We register cars.
Mark Levine brings you the news the government doesn't want you to know.
Today, an explosive story about connections between white supremacists and Islamic terrorists.
When there's a conflict between Scalia's conservative values and the Constitution of the United States, he throws away the Constitution.
We do have secret prisons. That is not what America's all about.
Let's go to Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. When Congress or a state legislature or the president do something, they're supposed to do it according to the rules set up by the Constitution of the United States or by the individual rules of the various chambers, whether it be Senate or the House or executive orders of the president. They're supposed to go by the rules. Same is true with state legislatures. There are rules for a reason, to keep things there, to keep, frankly, the majority ruling. We live in a democracy. It's a republic. We elect our representatives. They're supposed to represent the people, and things are supposed to go by the rules. That means in Congress, if you've got a bill, you send it through to committee, they argue about it in committee, they vote on it in committee, and then it goes to the floor, they vote it on the floor, the majority wins. That's the way it's supposed to work. Unfortunately, that's the way it almost never works, whether it's in Congress or in state legislatures. Both Democrats and Republicans have found all kinds of ways to circumvent the system. And we're going to talk about them tonight. Everything from gerrymandering to filibustering, these great American traditions of making sure that your party wins even when the majority votes for the other side. I'm, of course, a Democrat. My guest, Matt Robbins, is a conservative. I don't think he calls himself a Republican.
Recovering Republican.
A recovering Republican. I wanted to call you by the right name.
That's right.
But tonight I want to talk about ways, frankly, in which both parties abuse the system. Though I do want to start with your party.
Let's do it.
And I want to start with your party in Virginia. So in Virginia, with the time they redistricted, the Virginia Constitution says, I don't have the Virginia Constitution here, but they have a Constitution as well.
I'm sure you have it memorized.
Not the Virginia Constitution. I have the American.
The oldest
memorized.
Constitution in America.
It is the oldest Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Says that you redistrict every 10 years.
Right.
And that's standard in many states because that's when the Constitution says that a census shall be done, and then they move the boundaries around in Congress nationwide because there's 435 members, and if California's population grows and North Dakota's population shrinks, you have to adjust accordingly. Okay. So Virginia says you do this every 10 years. After the 2000 census in 2001, the Democrats controlled the Senate of Virginia. The Republicans controlled the House of Delegates. And instead of doing what I would have liked to have seen, and I think what you would have liked to have seen, a fair district-based map based on common interests where either party has a chance to win many of the seats.
Compactness.
The way they do it in Iowa, for example.
Right.
And the way I think I advocate should be done in every state. No, both parties decided to gerrymander to fix the districts to make sure that even if a majority of voters voted for one party, the party in power would stay in power. So the Republicans took charge of the House of Delegates, and the Democrats took charge of the Senate, and they redrew the lines to protect the incumbents. Aren't politicians wonderful things? So they go ahead and they do that, and that's the deal, and they agree to the deal. The Democrats accede to the horrible Republican district lines in the House, and the Republicans accede to the horrible Democratic district lines in the Senate. And that's
Gentlemen's agreements.
Gentlemen's agreement.
All
we'll protect ourselves and screw the voters.
That's right.
That's what politicians do. Okay, but it was one of the few bipartisan things that they can accomplish.
That's true.
All right. So they agree to this. Now, and that's the way it stood. Then there was an election. The Senate became 2020, a tie. In a tie, in Virginia, the lieutenant governor,
Bill
Bolling, he breaks the tie. And so Senate Republicans went to Bill Bolling and said, you know what, Bolling, we want to break our gentleman's agreement. We want to leave the House incredibly redistricted for the Republicans, but we want to redistrict the Senate too. It's 2020, you're doing the silent vote. Come on, join us here. And Bill Bolling said, I can't do that. I can't do it because it's wrong.
That's not why Bill Bolling said
because you made a deal. Oh, tell me, why did Bill Bolling say
he couldn't do it? Because Bill Bolling was, by all rights, going to slide and coast into that governorship, or at least running for governor against Terry McAuliffe, until Ken Cuccinelli and the conservatives in the party changed the system from a primary to a convention.
All that's true.
Thereby locking Bill Bolling out.
Yeah.
Bill Bolling's mad at the party.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say,
He's taking his toys and going home.
This incident happened after
Correct.
he lost the nomination or couldn't win the
chance of
nomination.
the nomination.
The chance of a nomination for governor. And I was going to say it couldn't be to affect the nomination because this happened afterwards.
Right.
You're saying he's mad.
He's mad.
And he's actually attacking his own party.
Absolutely. He's threatening to run as an independent.
I was thinking he had some principles and he was going to say that a deal's a deal, and Republicans got what they wanted in the House. The Democrats should get what they wanted in the Senate. And besides, the Virginia Constitution prohibits this anyway.
Right.
I thought he had a principled response.
The Bill Bowling I knew in 2004, I worked in the General Assembly in Richmond during Mark Warner's historic tax hike. That was a noble and honorable Bill Bowling. That Bill Bowling has been gone.
You know, it's hard to know. It's hard to know a man's motivations. He cited what I said. He cited the Constitution. He cited the deal. He cited the agreement that was already made. In your view, he actually is not so honorable, but he just wants to screw over his own party.
No, he doesn't mind that it hurts the party.
We don't know his motivation. We do know that he refused, and so 2020 vote would have lost. This little sneaky thing couldn't have done through. The Republicans,
thank God for inauguration.
The Republicans went to Plan B. And Plan B.
I hate anytime Republicans use the phrase Plan
2.
B.
They went to plan number 2.
Thank you.
And plan number 2 was, okay, it's 2020.
Right.
But 79-year-old Senator Henry Marsh, who's an African-American out of Richmond, who's a civil rights leader, veteran civil rights leader, was going on Martin Luther King Jr. Day to attend the inauguration of the President of the United States, who is African-American.
Correct.
And the Senate decided, they waited, they looked around, they said, is he out? Is he out the door? Is he on the road? Okay.
Bang goes the gavel.
Bam, ram through the legislation. They take a bill that has minor districting, go through, wholly redistrict the whole thing, basically take away African-American voting rights. They create one large majority-minority district where they cram all the blacks in South Virginia into one gerrymandered district. And they do it to decrease the Democratic seats by about 7, not by issue of the voters, but by issue of drawing the lines.
Right.
And they do it by a vote of 20-19 before Henry Marsh can come back in town and vote the way his constituents are. Obviously, he was not told of this. This was complete legislation by ambush. I hope, Matt, that you will condemn this and tell the governor of Virginia that he's got a veto, and actually tell the leader in the House who's considering whether or not to accept this. Bill Howell, this is out of order, and this is not the way Virginians want to see government done.
Bill will probably, Speaker Howell will probably come around to that. He's an old Virginia gentleman and the best.
He's talking about it. We're going to find out tomorrow, probably.
He doesn't have to. I think McDonnell will do it for him. I think McDonnell has aspirations to run for higher office, whether it be Senate or President even, sometime down the road. So I think Bob McDonnell will go against his party's wishes, as he's done before, and do this.
So this idea will die.
I do condemn. I think it will. I do condemn an action like this. It's pretty shameless, and it was as shameless when Dick Saslaw did it time and time and time again.
Well, look.
The Democrat.
I don't like any gerrymandering.
Dick Saslaw is a master.
No. I don't like any gerrymandering.
Republicans learned at the feet of the master.
But what happened in 2001 is, I said it at the outset, the Democrats did gerrymander the heck out of the Senate at the same time as the Republicans gerrymandered the heck out of the House of Delegates. It was an equal wrong.
That's true.
So, I mean, I'm not defending either party. But it does seem to me that at least when wrong meets wrong, there's some kind of balance there.
Yeah, somebody ought to take the high road. Someone should.
Well, it would be nice. And one of the things
I'm just tired of it always having to be folks on the right and never having to be folks on the left.
I got to tell you something. Most Democrats in Virginia support a fair, like they do in Iowa.
Most voters
do. Most voters do, and most Democrats do.
But when you get down to 19 or 20 state senators, including Dick Saslaw from right here in Fairfax, you're talking about some pretty.
Well, no, wait. They saw the Republicans were doing it. I think that Dick Saslaw and the Democrats in the Senate would heartily agree to an Iowa-type redistricting where both House and Senate are redistricted, not according to which party wants to draw the boundaries, but according to, the voters. Richmond gets a district.
I think that would be an easy one for them to agree to when they're out of political power. I've seen them when they're in their prime.
If the rule
and the full-throated cries from the minority leader, or majority leader in that case,
if the rule is that the party out of power will never agree to it, and since there will always be a party out of power, it will never happen.
And I think there's the rub. That's where we are.
Well, how about a Virginia constitutional amendment to force them to do it?
You could. Why not?
I mean, take it to the
Power
voters.
Of the people.
You and I can both support that.
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm glad to hear that. So you think this isn't going to go forward. I'm glad to hear that. Another Republican plan that I think will not go forward was to do the electoral votes by the congressional districts
I've seen this.
that have been redistricted by the Republicans. And according to the Republican plan, and I want you to think about what a wonderful plan this is.
I love how you say that. Like they're twirling their mustache.
Well, it is.
It's
nefarious. It's beautiful.
But it's never that way when it's the other side doing it.
Obama won the state of Virginia, fair and square,
He did,
in 2012.
twice.
According to the Republican plan, Obama would get 4 of Virginia's electoral votes, and Romney would have gotten 9.
Seems fair.
So Obama would
9
get
congressmen?
less than a third of the state that he won. Why can't we let majority rule in this country? And I'm going to bring it to Congress as well. In the House of Representatives, Republicans gerrymandered the heck out of that. As you know, a majority of Americans voted for Democrats in the House. More voters cast their votes for a Democrat representative than a Republican representative.
Sure.
It seems to me
now that's in a presidential year where coattails and the voters, It
happened. 2010, more voters voted for Republicans.
Correct.
I don't like a system whereby the majority doesn't rule. Whether it's true in the House, whether it's true in filibustering in the Senate.
And there are groups called American Elect and other groups that are trying to change this.
What's your view?
I think the Electoral College is a necessary evil. I think it's okay the way it is.
Why is it necessary?
I think
it's evil. Evil's too strong. I think it's a mistake.
Yeah.
I understand why the founders did it. We can talk about what happened in 17.
Yeah.
We don't need electors right now. They're not even real anymore. They in fact, they're bound by law.
Agreed.
So why can't we just have the popular vote decide?
I think it gets very, very messy, and I think we're so close to for God's sake, they were talking on 60 Minutes Sunday night about 2016 and Hillary, right there with the president next to her at the hip. And I think, unfortunately,
she's probably running
she is, and the permanent campaign that never stops is never going to allow a breathing interval for us to ever implement anything different than the Electoral College system. Every time you introduce something else different, every time you propose something new, there's an angle or there's a benefit to a certain group.
I haven't heard too many in your party support it. I
support the popular vote?
Support the popular vote.
Yeah.
Do you?
I don't.
You don't?
No.
Okay. Well, now tell me why.
Yeah.
Explain to me why you prefer this crazy system whereby the popular vote can go to one guy and the other person wins the election.
I don't claim to be an electoral college or even math specialist. I do understand that this has been the system we've worked with for how many hundreds of years now in
200
electing presidents. So as a conservative, I like to keep things the way they are. I like to keep things the way they are, and I like people to go to the polls knowing what to expect. I think
as a progressive, I like to see whether an idea is a good one before I know whether to continue it or not.
You like to change things, period.
If it's a bad idea. No. There are things that we think work. So security, Medicare, we don't want to change those things.
After you introduce them, you never want them to change.
It's the things that don't work.
I got you.
It's the things that don't work. You know what I think it would take, and we could have had it, is Obama winning the Democrat winning the popular vote, and the Republican winning, vice versa.
That,
The Republican winning the popular vote, and the Democrat winning the electoral vote, and some Republicans will say, we have to change this.
It all depends on whose ox is being gored.
Well, that's
really
true.
Does.
And so what I want to talk about in the next 45 minutes is all these ways, everything from recess appointments to filibusters to all the ways that
constitutionality of recess appointments.
Well, that people try to work around the system.
Right.
And because I think we're coming up against
executive orders.
I didn't say the president's beyond it either. I think that both parties are doing it, and they're raising the stakes, and it's attack, and attack afterwards.
We're going to fall off the cliff.
I think so, and I want to talk about that. Folks, if you want to join the discussion, I'd like to hear from you. It's 888-488-MARK or 571-749-1166. Give us a call.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs or to make a tax-free donation, contact C. Fripp at AOL.com.
Easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. This is Mark Levine, talking about all the ways in which, well, people go around the rules of the Constitution of the United States. And some of them are sketchy. Some of them are perfectly legal. And I want, call me crazy, I want majority rule. I want democracy. I think that's what makes America great. I want to be able to elect and have the majority represented, except for certain minority rights protected in the Constitution of the United States. My guest, Matt Robbins, I think largely agrees, but...
Except for one glaring fact, we are not a democracy, we are a republic.
We are.
A representative republic.
That's true.
Which means we have representatives who do everything from cast their votes as electors in the college.
But since we have representatives...
To congressmen, to senators.
Shouldn't the representatives...
That takes the power from the direct hands of the people, for better or for worse.
Well, and I'm not a huge fan of direct democracy.
Okay.
I want to say that.
I'm happy to hear that.
No, I'm not.
Egypt's got direct democracy right now.
Well, I don't know that it does.
Well, in the streets.
I don't know that it does.
Mob rule.
I've seen plenty of silly California propositions as a former resident of California.
Same here.
Who, where the people will vote to cut taxes and raise spending and to balance their budget all at the same time.
Right.
Not recognizing that the three things are mutually incompatible.
They may realize it. They may.
One funny story I told on the air just yesterday was when I was on the radio. In Switzerland, they had direct democracy. And the little canton...
And a gun in every home.
No, it was a sword, actually. Well, they have a gun. They do have a gun in the home. That's true. But in Appenzeller Innerrhoden, they would vote by lifting their swords in the marketplace.
Oh, wow.
But because women were not allowed to carry a sword, women couldn't vote. So they said, I'm sorry, we'd like to let women vote, but they don't have a sword.
If only you had a sword.
So obviously they couldn't vote, and that was the policy till 1973.
Wow.
When Switzerland became the last Western European state to give full rights to women. Little
known fact.
Like to fill in a little bit
like
trivia
that.
there. Anyway, let's go back, though. In a republic,
yes,
the only way we can trust representatives is if they are, wait for it, representative of the people. I believe that when you have a minority ruling, that's no longer representative democracy or a republic.
But
that is bordering on tyranny.
But they have to be reelected, and that's the genius of the system. They have to be reelected by that populace.
No, they don't.
If they go too far,
no, they don't.
If they don't represent people enough, then they're going to get thrown out of office.
That's true in the Senate, where every individual in the Senate can cast, every individual in the state can cast a vote for the senator. That's not true in the House. In the House of Representatives, if you don't vote for your representative, they simply will exclude you from the vote. They'll draw crazy district lines, and particularly Florida is probably the most classic example, where they have district lines. They grab a black neighborhood, grab another black neighborhood, go out to the Atlantic Ocean for 200 miles, come back in, grab a black neighborhood, and they can design it. And actually, you can design a system where you can take a state that votes 65% for the Democrats, and by drawing district lines, you can get a 65% Republican.
Blessed by both parties in most cases.
Well, the gerrymander, of course, is an ancient American tradition. It dates back to 1812. With Governor Elbridge Gerry, by the way, that's how you pronounce his name, drew a district that looked like a salamander,
right.
And that's where it came into our system. But you and I both agree that this has got to stop.
It's gotten ridiculous.
And unfortunately, this is done legislature by legislature. And so, for example, I can hardly blame Maryland for gerrymandering to get rid of one Republican when Pennsylvania, to its north, has gerrymandered to get rid of 6 Democrats. And of course, the Republicans have done a much better job at gerrymandering than we Democrats have. Given that you agree with me that this is something that should be fixed, how would you propose to do it? Does it take a constitutional amendment? I'm not even sure that federal law could do this.
I doubt it.
Maybe you could. Because
probably have to be a state measure. Probably have to be something on the ballot for a proposition or a ballot initiative that they could.
But if you do it state by state, like California did it, and in doing so, they basically disenfranchised their own mostly Democratic voters.
They did.
So it would have to be something like a constitutional amendment. nationwide, but maybe we could get it passed. I don't know.
I doubt it. I doubt that the average voter cares enough about this issue. I mean, it's burning to people like you and me, but it's not to them.
I don't think the average voter realizes that.
I don't think the average voter knows
that most Americans supported Democrats in 2012 for the House of Representatives, and yet we got a Republican speaker.
It's just not enough for you, is it, Mark? It's not enough to have the White House a second time and the Senate that hasn't passed a budget a second time or third time now. It's not. You want the whole thing. Oh, they're going to under duress now because they're being forced to by the House.
One of the reasons the Senate has difficult acting, of course, is because of the filibuster.
That's not the reason Harry Reid hasn't passed a budget.
That's another time true
That's
about
not the
American
reason Harry
tradition.
Reid hasn't passed
I think it is. I think because Republicans have filibustered more under Obama than all Congresses in all of American history put together.
Really?
Count up all those filibusters, it's less than what happened in the last 4 years. Add them up.
This include Jimmy Stewart's and Mr. Smith?
I don't think it includes that one because that one wasn't real.
Robert Byrd's?
But
Robert Byrd, a king of the filibuster.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. No, both parties have done it, but again, just like both parties have done gerrymandering, your party has been the king, or your recovering party has been the king of both filibustering and gerrymandering. So there's been filibuster reform. It's been pretty minor. I think it goes in the right direction, but it's small potatoes. Basically what they've said is you can't filibuster the filibuster anymore. Republicans were actually filibustering the motion to proceed to filibuster just to delay everything a week, gum up the system, and prevent the Senate from, passing a budget. Now you can't filibuster the filibuster anymore. Only one filibuster. But real reform, and also some nominations, low level, can't be filibustered. But in terms of real reform, like I say, think about how the filibuster came into being. It came into being because of an accident.
Right.
The first Senate had rules that let you vote to go to a vote, just like the House does. And then in 1800-something, some clerk forgot to write that rule down, and they didn't even notice it for 20 or 30 years. And some enterprising senator said, hey, there's no way to stop the vote. And what they did is they kept speaking, and they kept talking and talking and talking to get their way, just like...
Imagine that, a politician finding a way to make what they want happen.
Just like Mr. Smith goes to Washington. But you know what? Even that system was preferable to the system we have now. Because, I always talk about the 1957 Strom Thurmond.
Yes.
He filibustered the Civil Rights Act of 1957.
Right. Reading recipes,
he was the only one that really wanted it, and he waited for 18 hours from 6 a.m. till midnight when the guy had to use the facilities. He just couldn't hold in, and Strom Thurmond's bladder saved the nation.
Bless his heart.
I'm not going to bless his heart.
I'm kidding. This is what got Trent Lott fired.
I'll bless his bladder. But the point is this. One of the reforms is Democrats have said, let's go back to a speaking filibuster. If you care enough to shut the whole Senate down.
Show up on the floor.
You and your 30 friends, and keep talking through the night.
Right.
And, if it's that important to you, show Americans, and if Americans think you're fighting for principle, they'll support you. And if they think you're foolish, then they're going to call you foolish. But don't do it in the dark of night and say, well, we don't have
But Mark,
40 votes.
Let's flip the script a bit. I mean, you talk about what the majority of Americans want. You think Americans don't know about this? You think Americans don't know the filibuster is being used by both sides in the last decade? How many seats did you pick up?
I don't think most Americans are even aware of the filibuster
this time.
We have 55.
So how many did you pick up this cycle?
Two this cycle.
So two. So clearly somebody's watching.
It was 53.
Clearly people are watching. And if they wanted a filibuster-proof majority, they would elect it. Across the country and in the states, they would elect enough Democrat senators to where no amount of flies in the ointment could stop the machine.
First of all, to change the rules in the Senate.
For whatever reason, we have divided government, and you have to say that some of the voters prefer that. Some people want gridlock. Some people don't want this president.
No, I don't think people want gridlock.
Some people want the works gummed up. They do not want this president's activist agenda to go through.
I think there are Republicans who want Republicans in charge, and there are Democrats who want Democrats in charge. And I don't think either side wants gridlock. They both want their side in charge.
George Will calls gridlock the highest function of government.
Well, George Will likes gridlock.
I tend to agree with
George Will likes gridlock.
But considering what they do when they start casting votes, I'm okay with it.
To change the Senate rules requires a 2/3 vote.
Correct.
Unless they do what some have called the constitutional option and some have called the nuclear option, depending on which party and who's in power. 50 votes, and you can do it. You table an amendment, and it can be done. It is, although it can be done under the Senate rules, just like the filibuster was a loophole through the Senate rules.
I don't think anybody wants to go down that road, including your Democrat Party.
Well, Harry Reid doesn't. Some of the Democrats do.
Right.
Many Democrats do.
Right.
I'm not even sure. Maybe a majority do. But Harry Reid does not, because he's been in the minority and he doesn't want it to happen to him. So let me talk about ways to keep the filibuster alive.
Let us reason together, as LBJ would say.
But make it so we're not quite so gummed up. Let me give you, first of all, a solution on nominations. In my humble opinion, there's two kinds of nominations the president makes.
Mm-hmm.
There's the lifetime nominations to the U.S. judiciary.
Correct.
Federal courts, Court of Appeals, Supreme Court, where one president makes a very, very important decision that will affect Americans for decades to come, particularly if you appoint a young guy there, or a young woman.
Here's the black robe you'll be buried in.
That's right. And so that's beyond that president. That, to me, actually should allow the filibuster, because that person is supposed to rule according to the Constitution and should rule in a way that really should be respectable to both sides.
Okay.
I kind of want a supermajority of Republicans and Democrats to say this is a fair person.
So that's a concession you're willing to offer in exchange for
in
what?
contradistinction to a presidential's nominees for cabinet,
ATF,
National Labor Relations Board, ATF,
right.
Consumer Protection Bureau. I think the president should get the people he or she wants there, and if you don't
I think
you change the president,
most
and you get
Republicans
someone
agree with
there.
that.
So you shouldn't filibuster presidential nominees to
I'm
a
sorry,
set term.
Who just sailed through in his Secretary of State hearings? Who's just?
Well, John Kerry sailed through.
Right.
But the Republicans like John Kerry. John Kerry is going to get 95 votes.
Well, that's my point.
But that's not the issue.
When it's a good pick, the president does get who he wants. When it's a bad pick, like Susan Rice, he doesn't.
Well, my belief is that the president should be held accountable for his picks. And
the Senate has a constitutional right to foreign affairs.
Advise and consent. Right. So my view is if 51% of the Senate, 50%, because if the president's doing it, the vice president's going to support it. If half the Senate supports it, that's good enough for a limited term under the president. But for the judiciary, we should allow filibusters. What do you think of my
I think a lot of conservatives, a lot of Republicans think that even a 4-year term is too long for some reactionary people like Ms. Rice. I think that's why they stood on principle and made clear they were not going to allow it.
But Mrs. Rice does not make America's foreign policy.
She does not.
President
but the Secretary
Obama
of State has
makes
a great amount of leeway. You'll see the interview. You'll see how much he talks about Hillary's abilities and liberty and autonomy.
Secretary of State's a very powerful office.
It's remarkable.
But she reports to the boss,
sort of
the President of the United States.
When she's not on an airplane.
Here's my real problem.
Yeah.
It's not even about Susan Rice. It's about refusing to allow the president to have anyone there. The ATF is empty.
Right.
The National Labor Relations Board is empty.
Right. He tried that.
If Richard Cordray, if his nomination is thrown out by the courts,
right, which it probably will be,
then the Consumer Protection Board is empty.
Right.
Do you think?
But the other nominee, what's her name? The little lady?
Elizabeth Warren, who's now senator?
The replacement, the little lady that just got, I can't think of her name, Mary Jo.
In the SEC.
That's coming into Consumer Protection. She's coming into Consumer Protection. I think you got them reversed. There's two nominees that are up right now, Cordray and her, and he said nobody messes with Mary Jo or whatever her name is. And Republicans are largely expected to allow that nomination because she's excellent on the merits.
I'm glad.
They're not going to allow him because he's awful on the merits. The system works.
Well, he's terrific, actually. But that's not my point. My point is this. When you have a law that goes through the regular process and both parties support and the president signs into law, and the law says the president will appoint to this agency and this agent will have these powers, and either party says, I don't like this law. And even though it passed the majority of the Senate and the majority of the House, I don't like it.
Right.
So we're going to make sure that nobody ever, no matter who the president picks, will ever get appointed to this office so that we can shut it down.
That's exaggeration.
That's exactly what your party's done with the National Labor Relations Board.
Well, that's
they will not allow.
Case. But again, secretaries of state, secretaries of defense are going to sail right through. They're going to be fine.
Should a body be able to say, we don't like this branch of government, we're going to shut it down in the minority?
When it's a co-equal branch of government, hell yes. They should.
I think that's pretty radical stuff. Let's see what you think. Give us a call, 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275, locally 571-749-1166. Matt wants to shut down the government, sounds like. Do you?
Get to the cheap shot.
Play, it's you. Girardi, it's you. Because you're not playing. No, right side of the screen is Girardi. Girardi, right side of this.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's a matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try.
Only you.
Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about retail money. Nothing very nice. Holy smile. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water.
At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site.
That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff.
You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent.
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine, discussing all kinds of congressional and legislature and presidential inaction.
And nuclear options.
Well, what I'm discussing is ways to go around regular order, ways to go around the system, and why I'd like to see it stop.
The trains must run on time.
Look, we have these rules, and the answer is if you don't like the rules, change the rules. But don't look for all the intricacies in the rules. So what you just said before the break, and I want to give you a full chance to respond.
I appreciate that.
Is you said that if you don't like the National Labor Relations Board, which has been part of American law ever since the Wagner Act of 1935,
You're so good on this
I
stuff.
think, and maybe 38. It's in the 1930s, and has been the law. If the Republicans don't like it, you know what?
Right.
Get both houses and repeal the damn law. All right? You don't like it? Repeal it. That you have
That's
the
what
right
I just
to do.
said a minute ago.
Right.
Elect enough senators.
Right. But because it's the law, and because under the law the president appoints various, and then actually the tradition is to appoint people from both parties.
Correct.
And the president has been willing to do that. He appointed Democrats and Republicans. And Democrats have said, we don't want unions to have their rights under the law. We don't like the law, and so we're going to make sure that because we can't kill the law formally, we're going to kill it informally by preventing the president from nominating anyone.
It's a naked partisan power play.
It is. And I think that when that happens, not when the Republicans say we don't like your nominee, which is fair. I don't think it should be able to filibuster. I don't think it should be able to filibuster a presidential nominee for a position. I think that should just be majority vote. I do think, particularly for Supreme Court justice, I'm fine with saying you need 60 votes for that. And I think that's, but
which would be a major radical change if we did that.
Well, we've kind of done it. I mean, we haven't had a Supreme Court. Although, actually, when Robert Bork, when the Democrats defeated
good old Robert Bork, when all this weird stuff started happening,
they defeated him by a majority.
Teddy Kennedy and Joe Biden leading the way
by a majority vote.
Yeah.
And when Clarence Thomas became a Supreme Court justice, he won 52-48.
Right.
So he didn't win 60 votes either.
Correct.
So the Republicans who are insisting on 60 votes before President Obama can get his choice for Secretary of State are just fine with ramming through a Supreme Court justice that'll be on the court for 50 years based on a 52-48
After
vote.
an even better nominee has been savaged by partisan Democrats, we were okay with that. Tit for tat, backlash is okay.
Robert Bork was Reagan, and Clarence Thomas was later. That was
yeah, Bork was better
Sr.
than Thomas. Right, that's my point. Yeah, Bork was savaged by Democrats.
Bork believed the Civil Rights Act was unconstitutional.
He did.
Bork believed, as I think Ted Kennedy said, in back alley abortions and blacks in chains.
On.
But that's another subject.
But the dream never dies.
Bork was a pretty radical guy.
As was Ted Kennedy.
I think Ted Kennedy was a pretty heroic guy. My point is this.
It depends on where you sit.
You believe, because this can come back to haunt your party too.
It comes back to haunt both sides.
That if you don't like
it does.
an office, let's say we get a nice liberal as president who doesn't like defense.
Right.
All you have to
I'm sorry, I thought we had that.
All I have to do to stop the military, don't allow the president to appoint a Secretary of Defense.
Mark,
just filibuster
surely you're
and
not
the military does.
Surely you're not equating the head of the ATF, a paramilitary drug enforcement agency, with Secretary of Defense.
The alcohol,
surely
tobacco,
you're not equating
and
those
firearms
things. Surely you're not equating those things.
Is responsible
$700 billion budget
for
what? 30 billion maybe?
The ATF is responsible for protecting the
apples
lives
and oranges
of tens of thousands of Americans.
It's not the SecDef. And they're not even close.
Right now, because we have no head of the ATF.
The president's immediate cabinet, secretaries of state, defense, those heavyweights are not the same as the lower level
Matt, there's no law
functionaries.
that says this at all. There's no law that says, we're going to let you have a Secretary of State, but we're not going to let you have these other agencies we don't like.
I didn't say it was right to withhold the nomination for NLRB. That's partisan political power, as I said.
Well, I want to be very clear.
And both sides do that.
When have the Democrats ever said to a Republican, we don't like this particular nominee, we don't like Robert Bork, but you just can't have any nominees?
Yeah. Oh, we don't say any. Come on, again, once we let Kerry, we're going to let Hagel go through. We let all sorts of nominees go through.
Who do you let through the NLRB?
I doubt anybody at this point.
It's
become so toxic.
The ATF?
It's become both of these have become such stopgaps. It's crazy.
Right now, our law is
that
if you are a bartender and you see someone extremely drunk and inebriated throwing his fists around.
I love when you do this. I love when
you can't serve them another drink. Because if you do and they drive home, you can be sued.
Absolutely.
You can, however, hand them an AR-15 perfectly legally with a 100-bullet drum and say, go for it, drunk guy.
Those won't be legal.
And there's no penalty for it.
There's
no penalty for it. So it's very clear. Serving somebody, a glass of Jack Daniels and Coke, that's dangerous. But handing an incredibly drunk, crazy person an AR-15, that's approved by your party. Now, if we had the head of an ATF, that
what does
wouldn't
that have to do? Oh, okay. I was wondering where you were going with that.
The Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms
you brought it all
Agency
home there at the end. I
regulates this
and
kind
that would
of stuff.
stop that bartender.
They actually had an ad. John Stewart pointed this out. They showed a real ad at the ATF where they said, if you are selling guns, we would think that you would use your judgment and please not sell it to someone visibly inebriated or high. We recognize that we can't prevent you from doing this, that the law is that you can sell perfectly legally to someone who's crazy, drunk, and high, but we would hope you would use your better judgment and not do that. We have a government regulator pleading with people, please don't let someone murder someone, please don't let someone murder someone. We recognize we have to allow it. Okay. That is not a very powerful agency, and that's because the Republican Party has hamstrung this agency.
Right now, one directorship is being withheld. You're right. It's a partisan play. Again, I think it's small bore compared to the
But you're
others.
not going to defend that.
I haven't defended it. I said it's a naked partisan power
grab. And you're not
grab.
going to defend the NLRB refusing to allow a nominee to sit there.
The NLRB is a separate issue. I mean, when you've got a president that's so in bed with the unions and a president with such radical views,
elected by the American
to the
people
left
fairly,
of the mainstream of the political bodies
he's
that
not
are
going to
elected in
be able
this
to appoint
country.
anybody.
I didn't say that. I said his appointee and the intent of the appointee were completely incompatible with what's going on in America
There
right
is
now.
not a single. The Republicans have made clear they don't want anyone to be appointed.
Well,
they want the thing to be shut down.
That's partisan. Well, I would love for it to be shut down. I'm not going to do it ex nihilo. I'm not going to do it de facto the president does with executive orders.
So here's my
We're all waiting on an immigration plan. The president just waves his wand, throws a holy writ in the air, and says, boom, dream act.
The Constitution of the United States.
Where is that in the Constitution? Where are those executive powers enumerated?
Which one?
That you can make 1 million to 5 million illegal aliens okay and kosher overnight.
It's very simple.
Where is that?
I'll give it to you. It says that the president shall.
Mark, come on.
Hold on.
You know what's in that. You know what's in that document, and you know what's been standard accepted practice.
The president has the power to appoint a principal officer in each of the executive departments.
Right.
And what they shall do is they shall.
I'm talking about immigration here. I'm talking. What gave him the grounds to do that?
I'm talking the same discretion that gives every prosecutor in the country.
And he can declare the moon to be made of cheese, I guess, as well.
Every prosecutor in the country can
say,
you know what? We're going to go after this murderer, and we're not going to go after this serial speeder.
Right.
Because even though Mark Levine regularly goes over 55 miles an hour and has just conceded it on open television, we're not going to throw this guy in jail.
Your Obamacare premiums are going to be really high now they've got that on tape.
We're not going to throw him in jail for speeding. We're going to go after murderers instead. Even though speeding is against the law,
my point is,
that's prosecutorial
executive
discretion.
orders have not been used in such a magnificent, humongous way.
George W. Bush
When did George Bush declare amnesty for millions of illegal aliens? When was that?
George W. Bush signed an executive order on immigration.
Okay.
And I'll show it to you.
And how many millions?
Where he determined they were going to go after criminals first. I'll show it to you.
Okay, please do. Let me know how many millions of people became legal after that.
I'll happy to show it to you. They're not legal. They're simply not enforcing.
Right.
It's not legal to smoke marijuana, but many prosecutors across the country, particularly in places like Colorado, have decided we're not going after them.
Well,
we're using our resources
for a country
elsewhere.
built on rules and law and order, like you talked at the start of the show, they don't like that gray area. They like law and order. They like rules. They like black and white.
Wait a minute.
They don't.
For 200 plus years,
that's right,
Mr. Robbins.
That's right.
Prosecutors and executives.
I'm not talking about the criminal justice system. I'm talking about everyday American life. Americans like to play by the rules, expect others to do the same thing.
What the president
they don't like federal authorities telling them how to lead their lives.
What the president did with regard to immigration and he is the guy in charge of the immigration.
Oh, it's his baby. That's
his baby,
right there.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
And he's the guy that sets policy.
Did we let him appoint somebody at ICE, by the way, or DHS?
I think so.
I think we did. Yeah.
I think so.
I think so. Yeah.
He's the guy.
So
who
we do allow some nominees.
Policy.
Right.
And the policy is of this president.
Even when the Senate and the Congress can't pass that policy, the president's going to imperially decree that millions of illegal aliens are now on the path to citizenship.
That's not what he said.
Like that.
No,
it is exactly what he said.
Not past the citizenship. It has nothing to do with
Absolutely
citizenship.
it is.
All the president did
Mark,
was
read
say,
the real-time reporting from the border. Everybody's declaring themselves children and grandchildren.
Let's use very careful words here.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay. The president is not making anyone a citizen.
Okay.
You can agree with that.
No, I can't.
That's the executive order.
They're on a path to citizenship.
Does not make anyone a citizen.
They are not being deported. The law is not being enforced.
They are not being deported.
They are allowed to go to college.
Not being deported.
Which means they will get a job, which means they will buy a house,
That's
which means they will live here, and I guarantee you they are on a path to citizenship.
The president has power to say, I'm not going to deport you.
The president knows a slippery slope when he sees one.
The president does not have power to say, I'm going to make you a citizen.
The president has set them on a slippery slope to citizenship.
It's perfectly fair for a president to say, I'm not going to deport this class of people. Yeah. It's perfectly fair. It's perfectly legal. It's perfectly right.
I don't think it is.
Well, you know what?
And there's a lot in my party who don't.
Then sue the president. But no, seriously.
That's impeachment, right?
Go to the United States Supreme Court and say this is unlawful. You did it with recess appointments.
I'm sure there's an amicus brief right now to that effect.
I will show you an executive order of George Bush that does
a similar thing
on a different subject.
I look forward to it.
Let me bring up my other point, though, which is that the Constitution says, this is Article 2, Section 2, the President shall have the power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of the next session. Every president,
the U.S. Court of Appeals disagreed with that.
From George Washington on.
Did they not?
I think the only exception would be William Henry Harrison.
How many Democrats are on the Court of Appeals that denied that?
0.
Okay.
Okay, they were all appointed by George W. Bush.
Okay.
It seems to me that particularly when
where's checks and balances in that little booklet?
The word checks and balances is not in this book.
Where's the idea? Co-equal branches of government.
The Senate shall advise and consent on appointees.
Judiciary does what?
Judiciary does what?
Yeah, where's the mention of the judiciary? Where's the ability of the judiciary to do what they just did and overrule the president in his choice of an NLRB?
Actually, it's not in there either. It's in Marbury versus Madison.
There you go.
It's an 1803 decision by Justice
There you
Marshall.
go. So everything that we live by is not in there.
That's true.
Right. Like separate but equal.
That sounds like
separation of church and state. These sorts of things. These things are not constitutional. The word equality is not in that document.
Yes, it is. Equal protection under the law.
The word equality is not in there.
Equal means equality.
It's your mantra. It's your shibboleth on the left, but it's not in there.
14th Amendment says
equal
no
protection
state
is
shall
not the
deny
word
anyone.
Equality. It's not. It's not.
Equal protection under the law.
I'm sorry, Mark. This holy shrine of equality is not in any of the Federalist Papers. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Declaration.
It's not in the Federalist Papers because it's in the 14th Amendment. It came after the Civil War.
We quibble over terms on the left and the right. You quibble over what the Second Amendment means.
I don't quibble.
You do.
I believe the Second Amendment believes what it says it is. It says a well-regulated militia.
And others interpret it completely differently.
Others just say, the first 13 words, the founders were smoking something. They were high at the time.
Right.
They didn't mean what they said. We don't care for the founders. We don't like what they said. We're going to ignore it. And then there are people like me who respect the founders, respect the living
I respect them too, and the document.
And respect the
fact that they knew we need to resist tyranny and have weapons in case it comes again.
That said that we need a well-regulated militia because they didn't like a standing army.
You know what a militia was made of back then?
Yeah.
I don't want to rehash this argument again.
Ordinary people.
Yeah, who just grabbed whatever gun was in their home and ran out to be part of it.
No, not quite. They were regulated.
They were paid.
They were regulated.
They were paid.
Not just paid.
Regulated is a strong word.
That's the word in the Second Amendment.
They were irregular.
I like the word
irregulars.
If you enjoyed this discussion, even if you're not, and you want to contribute your part, you certainly can do so. Just call in 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275, or you can dial locally 571-749-1166. It's rare that your voice can be heard on a live television show. Pick up the phone, give us a try. You might just disagree with both of us.
I helped turn my child's public school into a whole new kind of school. One with a curriculum that really motivates kids. One that has extended hours, 6 days a week, year-round. With loads of academic, cultural, and recreational activities. One that has support services like medical and dental right there. A school where parents' involvement is encouraged. Where teachers have more time to teach. And students are excited about learning. there's just one problem. My child doesn't ever want to come home. You can help turn your school into a community school for excellence. Find out how. Call 1-877-LOVE-TO-LEARN.
It's coming. Right to your neighborhood. And when it does, you may be surprised. It's your Social Security statement of your benefits, and it's going to help you plan your financial future. Your benefit statement will tell you how much Social Security you're eligible to receive and when you'll get it. Then you'll know how much you need to save for retirement, because that's coming too. The future is in your hands. Choose to save.
The toxic fumes from this meth lab are seeping into Jamie's sinus cavity. Ammonia vapors invade her throat. Toxic gases fill her lungs. Jamie's body is deteriorating. And she doesn't even know it.
Jamie, dinner.
So, who has the drug problem now? Find out how meth affects you at drugfree.org/.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. This is Mark Levine. Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. Still last chance for you to call in if you want to. 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275, or the local number up on the screen. My guest is Matt Robbins. You are the president of the...
Executive Director, American Majority.
Executive Director of the
right.
American Majority. Fascinating to have someone who... is a director of something called the American Majority.
That's in the minority right now.
Supporting minority ways to run the country. There's plenty of dictators have gotten in power from minority rule.
Come on, Mark.
Why can't we simply have majority rule?
Why can't we just have steamroll, all one-party control of every branch of government is what you're asking.
I'm just asking
You have
for
an imperial
majority
president
rule.
who's escalated costs, expenses, executive orders, edicts, czars,
There's probably
heads of departments,
100
like no one else, including George W. Bush, who was also bad at it, who was also horrible on the record. You've got all that. You've got a Senate that hasn't passed a budget in years. You had the House for 6 years? Four. You lost the House. You can't keep one half of one-third of the government, and it's not enough for you. We got to get it all. You'd be so much fun to play risk with. You would want the entire.
Of course I do.
Globe.
You got to win the game.
Absolutely.
Hey, listen, there's about
these
100,
are people's lives, and half the country disagrees with how it's being governed right now.
48%.
That's pretty damn close to half.
Now, a majority. There's about 100 democracies across the globe, and republics. In every single one of them, the majority has more power than the American government. That includes Canada, England, France, Japan.
Then that is how they designed their system.
You name it.
We did not design ours that way.
All right.
Thank you. And parliamentary systems are based on what?
Are based on majority rule.
And what was the antecedent of a parliamentary system in most cases?
The House of Commons?
A monarch, a king. We never had that. Thank God.
So Britain's not a democracy today?
It is now, but I'm saying, what was the antecedent? What was the origin of that parliamentary system? Was a king, and the parliament was erected to fight against a monarch's absolute will.
Against a monarch's absolute will.
Great in that case.
That's exactly
right. That system started differently than ours. We started as commoners.
Parliament
we started
was an
as
attack
regular
on
people.
the monarchy. It was a way to stop the monarchy.
America's still the best democracy on this country, on this planet.
We are the best country. I'll grant we're the best country on earth.
But not democracy.
But I don't think we're the fairest democracy.
Okay.
Anytime you have...
You can go with Tina Turner and live in Switzerland.
Anytime...
She's finally announced she's going to stay there the rest of her days.
Well, that's very nice. But if she doesn't have a sword, she can't vote in Alpenzeller in a rodent. Look, whenever you have a minority controlling a political system, it's very, very dangerous. And it's true all across the globe.
Please tell me again exactly what John Boehner is in control of.
John Boehner...
What is Mitch McConnell in control of?
Well, John Boehner...
I'm sorry.
...was not chosen by a majority of the American people.
All right.
He was not... The majority of the American people wanted Nancy Pelosi to be the Speaker of the House.
Okay.
So he is not...
But the rules of the game are the districts were drawn in 2010.
The districts were drawn in ways that you and I agree were unfair.
Right.
Because you want to end gerrymandering, too.
I would love to.
Okay.
Trust but verify, I would say.
Let's go into the filibuster. Now, in the filibuster, given our strange Senate, which... Let's face it
is a strange body.
It's not democratic.
It is not democratic.
The fact that California gets 2 senators and North Dakota and Delaware and Vermont each get 2 senators and Wyoming, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
That's not fair. It's the way it is, and I recognize that. But then in this undemocratic body...
So you respect the Constitution until such a time as you don't?
I respect the Constitution as it's written. Look, I recognize the Electoral College is our system.
Right.
I think it's
and
wrong.
The Senate is
and
designed
I think it should be changed.
as the founders intended.
Right. But the filibuster ain't in here.
Okay.
There's no.
Well, then pick on the filibuster, not on the two-senator rule.
Well, my point is, you already have an undemocratic body, and then you have this
as
additional
a cooling chamber to the passions of the people's house. It was designed that way. The Senate was designed to be a place where legislation went to die.
The Constitution originally,
it was designed to be a place where bad ideas went to die.
The Constitution, as you know,
and if you can accept that and embrace that, you can actually see the beauty in this very perverse body of old men in this elite club who do nothing, ever.
As you well know, the Constitution prior to 1916, I believe, had the senators chosen by the state legislature.
That's right.
It was even more removed from the people.
That's right.
And the people amended the Constitution to have direct election of senators.
And that's been a smashing success.
And I think that's a great idea. Are you against the...
I'm sympathetic to those who want the 17th Amendment to be repealed.
The 17th Amendment?
I'm sympathetic. I think there'd be a whole lot shorter leash if people allowed their state reps to elect a U.S. senator.
Yeah, then you could have the Koch brothers buy up all the state legislatures with all their secret money. One of the things people...
And how effective was that this year?
It was extremely effective.
I'm sorry, what?
It was extremely effective. Republicans control the state legislatures.
Mark,
gerrymandered
you got to stop
districts.
reading Mother Jones, dude. We lost our ass this cycle. We lost everything.
The President of the United States is very hard to defeat by money because everybody knows who the President is.
As our senators.
Senators.
As our most congressmen.
If you ask someone listening to this show.
We lost seats this cycle.
I ask you, if you're listening to the show right now.
We lost seats.
Do you know the name of your president? You probably do. Do you know the name of your senator? You probably do. You know your congressman? Less likely, but you probably do. Do you know the name of your state representatives? Can you name your state representative in the House of Delegates in Virginia, your state senator? Do you know their names? Most Americans don't.
Fife.
And because they don't, people like the Koch brothers can put massive amounts of money in and win those elections, and then those state representatives who you've never heard of can redraw those district boundaries to actually control.
They made a movie out of this.
Who is Speaker of the House?
The campaign.
So I would
Will
suggest
Ferrell.
to you that secret money, its greatest power.
It's not secret. It's fully disclosed in Virginia.
It's not disclosed
it
at all.
is.
Well,
unlimited
in
donations, full disclosure.
Well, those
That's the nationwide model right there.
It's not the nationwide model.
It should be.
I agree. I agree.
Give as much as you want. Have it real-time reported.
That Disclosure Act.
That's a brilliant system.
You support the Disclosure
Act?
Act?
Yes, absolutely.
Terrific. Most Republicans do not support the Disclosure Act. But I'm glad to see that Matt Robbins does.
Nothing to hide.
I'm glad, but here's my point. The secret money comes in the billions. It comes in through super PACs and things like that. And then they can quietly control the state legislature.
And there's no super PACs on the left.
There's far more on the right.
But there's none on the left. What's that OFA thing going on right now?
I believe that we should have everything up front and disclosed, and so does Obama, and so do the Democrats, and your party is against
until such
disclosure.
time as both parties go all in on the poker table.
Why do you?
There are going to be no changes.
What should the Democrats go all in on?
That's what all these things we're talking about. Gerrymandering.
Democrats
promising never to filibuster
Democrats
themselves.
support ending gerrymandering.
Promising
Democrats
never to block
support ending the
nominations
filibusters.
themselves. You're telling me the Democrat Party has taken the high road on every one of these issues since time immemorial?
No.
No,
I'm telling
you. Both sides do
I'm telling you the Democratic Party.
And so when the other side gets a leg up, they decide to get theirs.
Has proposed all these reforms.
Right.
And Republicans refuse to do that.
Whoever's in power refuses to do it, let's be honest. When it's your ox in the ditch, you don't want it to be gored. You don't. When you're in power.
Harry Reid hasn't agreed to the filibuster
if we
changes.
could agree,
let me ask you about the filibuster.
Sure.
Do you think we should go back to Mr. Smith goes to Washington, the speaking filibuster?
A verbal filibuster?
I think we should. If you care enough, then you should have to do it that way. What do you think? Speaking filibuster. Bring it back.
It's a noble sentiment. It is. And
Thank you.
It harkens back to Frank Capra. I didn't say I agreed on it.
I'm waiting for the handshake.
You're not going to get it. Because I think the Senate has become so arcane and so maneuverable. I think even people who don't use the filibuster can find ways and rules and committees to bog down legislation. So it's sort of the last resort in many cases.
But why not require the person to speak? If you really want to stop legislation, Mr. Smith, go to Washington and speak on that.
Why didn't your majority in 2008, your 2009, your brief majority, why didn't you take care of this?
Because it requires a 2/3 vote to change.
Okay, well, again,
we never had 67
once again,
votes.
if these ideas are so good that they're going to sell like hotcakes to the American public, elect enough senators to change the dang law.
The Constitution of the United States says we need a supermajority to ratify treaties.
Correct.
You need a supermajority to impeach the president.
Right.
You need a supermajority to pass an amendment to the Constitution.
Okay.
That's reasonable to me. All three of those things are very serious, important
things. I'm glad
things.
to hear that.
They require supermajority. The Constitution of the United States says nothing about supermajorities for ordinary legislation in the Senate or the House.
Then how have we gotten to this Mexican standoff?
Because some clerk made a mistake in 1803.
And both sides have abused it. Both sides.
So
might be
let's
big.
just get rid of the filibuster. Just throw it out.
I disagree
It's not
with that.
in this Constitution.
I disagree with that. I do. There's lots of things we've discussed tonight that aren't in the Constitution.
So you wouldn't go back to speaking filibuster?
I don't think I would.
All right. How about my proposal to say that you can filibuster judicial nominees but not presidential nominees?
That's an interesting one. It is.
I may have convinced you on that one.
You may have. I mean, the significance of one it heavily outweighs the other.
That's right.
But although
I would like to remind you,
even limited terms of Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State are very impactful.
But but they're just.
We've lost the Middle East on the Secretary of State's watch. We've lost the entire Middle East.
Here's the thing. The Democratic filibusters you're complaining about,
yes.
I want you to look back in the 90s.
I will do my homework.
In the 2000s, they were all on judicial nominees.
I see.
I cannot recall, you correct me if I'm wrong, I cannot recall a single Democratic filibuster. They disagree with various nominations.
Sure.
But a filibuster about a presidential nominee for, I mean, they were against John Tower, Secretary of Defense. I remember that one.
Remember that. The drinking problem.
That's right. And they knocked it down.
Yeah.
They did it by majority vote, not by filibuster.
Okay.
So I think these are some reasonable proposals that both sides
I just have a hard time believing
around.
that one party has consistently taken the high road every single time.
That's not what I said.
I know too many elected officials.
That's not what I said. I said that we took the high road with regard to judicial nomination.
Okay. Well, that's
because it seems to me that's a more serious thing.
It is.
And I'd like to see judges.
Although
I'd even be okay with 2/3 rule for judges.
That argument about a 4-year appointee at the cabinet level is, I mean, they could do a lot more damage.
I'll tell you one more thing about a presidential appointee. Andrew Johnson, the president after Abraham Lincoln, who was also impeached.
Correct.
You know what he was impeached under?
I can't recall.
It's called the Tenure of Office Act. What happened was the Senate at that time said, because they wanted to take over from Andrew Johnson, they said, Andrew Johnson, because we have to advise and consent over when you hire someone, we also get to advise and consent over when you fire someone. And he fired I believe it was the Secretary of State. And
That's
they
right.
said, he's still the Secretary of State. We don't accept his firing. We haven't consented it over. And that was the article they were going to impeach Andrew Johnson over. And by one vote, he remained in office.
Exactly, as happens every time.
So we've always, not by one vote.
Well, no,
by far more than one vote.
I mean, they always impeach. They never convict.
Well, they would have convicted Richard Nixon. But my point is this. I'd like to get back to democracy, to majority rule. One of the things that I find
to go to Athens.
Really gross is particularly when voters around the block, and it happened right here in Virginia, it happened in Fairfax County, voters waited 4 hours to vote at the polls, and Republicans have now said, we're going to make you wait longer.
Right.
We're not going to allow you to come in and vote ahead of time. We're not allowed to vote absentee without a reason. We will if you're 65.
I love these descriptions. We're like gremlins in the machines. I mean, according to
Republicans
you all,
do
we have
not
this
want Americans to
magical
vote.
ability to gum up the works, stop the machines, remove the machines,
it's not mystical,
move
it's not
polling
magical.
places. What
happened in Fairfax County for 4 hours?
I didn't vote in Fairfax County. I have no idea.
What happened is
astonishes me that we're this organized on a nationwide level and state-by-state level to stop votes we don't want, and we can't get the people we want elected to office. Tell me how that works.
Well, you actually did in Virginia.
Tell me how that works.
You're controlling the Virginia House. And what happens is the voters...
But we lost the state.
The brave voters of Virginia and Florida were willing to stand in line...
Raise their swords.
4, 8, 10 hours.
Yes.
To cast the right to vote.
I think that's a very convenient narrative.
I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
I didn't see that.
How about if we make it easy for people to vote? How about if we have lots of polling places open?
Why not do it online where fraud can be perpetrated so easily?
I'm not advocating that. I'm advocating for
Why not just have people hold up their finger and vote?
I'm advocating for enough precincts and ballots
Mark,
to make sure
these
that
things
everyone
invite
gets the right
fraud.
to vote.
They invite abuse.
Having more polling places open invites abuse?
No, I didn't say that. I was talking about online registration.
I didn't advocate for that.
But that's where the argument leads every single time.
No, I'm advocating for not making people wait in line 4 hours. Your party could make a difference. Virginia could make a difference.
Those evil Republicans stopping your vote.
I think we should stop them. Folks, if you want to comment on this discussion, just go to marklevinetalk.com and let me know what you think about it. Matt Robbins,
please don't vote.
Please go out and vote, even if they tell you not to.
Vote.
Matt,
thank you, Mark.
Always a pleasure.
Likewise.
And please watch more of the Inside Scoop. We are here every Sunday, and we're very glad to have you.